program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
It's 7 o'clock, so we'll call our meeting to order. This evening, if you'd like to speak, there are yellow slips of paper at the back of the room. Please make sure you fill one out and hand it to Ryan, sitting in the red up front. Ryan, raise your hand. There you go. If you do have a cell phone with you, and who doesn't these days, please turn it to silent or turn it off. If you do need to take a call, please leave the room. The way the procedure works tonight is first the city will make their report on the item that's on the agenda. Then we'll ask the applicant to come forward and add whatever remarks they'd like to. And then we open up to a public hearing. Everyone can come up one at a time to speak. Try and limit your remarks to 5 minutes or less. And please try and keep the information that you're stating fresh and not previously spoken by a previous speaker. So the first item on our agenda tonight is a public hearing for recommendation on a tax increment district to create a new TID for number 12.
Thank you, Chair Ebert. Jay Winzenz, Finance Director for the City of Eau Claire, and I'm pleased to be here this evening to talk to Plan Commission members about the creation of Tax Incremental District number 12. Proposed is the creation of a new tax incremental district in the vicinity of Water Street. The proposed district, as shown on this map, runs from approximately 2nd Avenue over to 7th Avenue along Water Street, and then south to Menominee Street over to 8th Avenue, and then south to the river, and picking up the remainder of a city parcel all the way down to 9th Avenue. The proposed district is consistent with various plans, including the Water Street Plan, the Historic Randall Park Neighborhood Plan, as well as the Comprehensive Plan. There is language in the proposed project plan that talks about expenditures being authorized within a half mile of the proposed boundaries of this tax incremental district. That is authorized by state statute, where you are allowed to spend money within a half mile of the proposed district. So this map shows those boundaries. Any parcel that touches the boundary of the proposed or the half-mile radius is considered to be in the tax incremental district. So the boundary may run through some parcels, particularly parcels on the south side of Congress Street. Those properties are considered in the district if any part of that parcel touches the boundary. There are various projects that are proposed for inclusion within this project plan, and in general they fall into 3 buckets, if you will. The first bucket that I'll talk about are projects having to do with the bike trail or pedestrian trail along the Chippewa River. That trail is in need of repair. There are portions of it that are starting to erode away and fall in or towards the Chippewa River. In addition, it doesn't have lighting or other amenities similar to trails in the downtown area. So proposed in the plan is a complete reconstruction of the trail from approximately the pedestrian overpass of the Chippewa River going to the UW-EC campus down to 9th Avenue, or just before Hobbs Ice Center. Included in the proposal are retaining walls to prevent the trail and the river from meeting, and there are lighting, landscaping proposed in the trail. In addition, there are 3 pedestrian overlooks proposed, one at 3rd Avenue, one at 4th Avenue, and one at 5th Avenue. The intent of the reconstruction of the trail is, first of all, to create a more inviting environment to draw people to the river, as we have done in other parts of our community, but secondly, to create a pedestrian connection between the Water Street area and the UW Eau Claire campus and the proposed Sonentag development to the west. So we think that this starts creating a critical link between 2 major destinations, one being the Sonentag Center and the other being the UW-EC campus, and connecting proposed housing developments to both of those areas. The second large bucket, if you will, is what at this point is being called neighborhood revitalization. There was a neighborhood revitalization task force formed about a year or so ago at the direction of this body. The recommendations of that task force included many things having to do with housing in the historic Randall Park neighborhood, the condition of that housing, and the number of rental properties in that particular area. The proposed project plan provides $2 million over the 15-year expenditure period, so approximately $100,000 per year and $150,000 per year in some of the latter years of the project plan to be used for neighborhood revitalization. It's staff's intent to work with the Historic Randall Park Neighborhood Association to define exactly what program or programs are included within that umbrella of neighborhood revitalization. Possibilities, might include rehabilitation programs for owner-occupied properties, could include programs to convert duplexes back to single-family occupancies, could include home ownership programs, but any number of programs could be included under that neighborhood revitalization umbrella. The third bucket, if you will, is an expansion of the existing city parking lot located at the corner of 4th Avenue and Chippewa Street. Both the Water Street plan as well as the historic Randall Park neighborhood plan both have contemplated the expansion of this parking lot to the west. This is really being proposed in 2 phases in the project plan, depending upon the availability of funds. Properties would be acquired, demolished, and parking lot constructed in their place, including lighting, landscaping, and paving. And just to, I guess, back up a little bit to the bike trail, also included in the out years of this is the possible acquisition of several properties, some residential and I think one commercial property that are currently located on the Eau Claire River. These property, as you may or may not know, the bike trail along the Chippewa River runs along the river, but then has to deviate from the river back onto Menominee Street for a block and then goes back to the river. Long term, we would like to try to acquire these properties if and when the property owners are interested in selling, with a long-term vision of opening up views of the river as well as relocating the bike trail to the riverfront. So those are the kind of the 3 large buckets of projects that are included in the proposed project plan. The table on the screen right now is a summary of the projected development that we're anticipating occurring within Tax Incremental District number 12. First, in 2017-2018, there's an existing project in the 200 block of Water Street. And you might say, here we are in 2017, that project is almost completed. How does that count? If this district is created before October 1st, the base value for the district goes back to January 1 of 2017. On January 1 of 2017, the buildings had been removed at that location. I believe there was a foundation in the ground, but that was about the extent of the value at that location at that time. So we are able to capture the increment off of the 200 block of Water Street project and use that as a catalyst for the initial phase of the improvements in this proposed district, which is the reconstruction of the trail along the Chippewa River. In addition, we're anticipating projects in the value range of $15 million occurring in 2019 and also in 2022. Now, these are projections, they're anticipated projects. If they don't occur, then we won't spend the money on some of those future year projects like the expansion of the parking lot or the acquisition of the properties along the river. The last table I'm going to put up and talk about is our projection of cash flow. Part of what we're going to be asking you to do this evening is find that the proposed tax incremental district is feasible from a cash flow perspective based upon the developments that I just outlined, the 200 block of Water Street as well as 2 additional projects with a value of about $15 million. The project costs that I presented to you. The proposed district breaks even in year 14 of a 20-year life. So the district would break even 6 years before its projected end at the end of 20 years. At that time, we will have the additional tax increment that the district has generated would be sufficient to pay for all of the project costs that were incurred within the district. As I indicated before, if the additional developments don't come as we've anticipated, we'll delay project expenses to make sure that this district does break even within its 20-year life. So before you this evening is a resolution, and within that resolution are 3 different findings that we're asking the Plan Commission to make. The first of those is finding that tax incremental district number 12 is feasible. Again, that goes to the cash flow statement that I just presented to you and the summary of costs and tax increment included within the project plan that you all received in anticipation of tonight's public hearing. The second finding is that the project plan and the creation of the tax incremental district is in general conformance with the Eau Claire Comprehensive Plan. There's various language within the project plan that talks about both the Water Street district plan as well as the historic Randall Park neighborhood plan, which are both components of the comprehensive plan. Both of those plans talk about the riverfront and making the riverfront more accessible to the residents. Both of those plans talk about the expansion of the parking lot in the 400 block of Chippewa Street, and also talk about the need for neighborhood revitalization of the housing stock within the historic Randall Park neighborhood and the number of rental properties within that particular district. So in my opinion, the proposed project plan is in conformance with the comprehensive plan of the City of Eau Claire. And the third and final finding that we will be asking you all to make is that it's in the public interest by increasing and diversifying the local property tax and job base. So those are the 3 findings that we're asking you to make by adopting the resolution this evening. And by adopting that resolution, the Plan Commission will be adopting the project plan for the creation of tax incremental district number 12 and making a recommendation to the City Council that the City Council adopt the project plan. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Commissioner Peterson.
What is the reason for the expansion of the parking lot? Is that for catching up or?
There's 2 reasons for the expansion of that parking lot. One is to support commercial development and commercial businesses along Water Street. I know that in speaking with the Water Street bid, They are interested in additional parking to support their businesses and potential additional residential developments within the Water Street corridor. The second reason is to potentially help address parking issues within the historic Randall Park neighborhood. Creating additional off-street parking may provide options for renters within that neighborhood to remove their cars from the streets and by providing off-street parking for them.
Won't any future development or redevelopment of the area be required by city code to provide their own parking needs?
Future redevelopments will be required to provide their own parking by code, but they also have the option to potentially lease parking stalls from another entity, such as the city. So if there's a surplus of parking available in this parking lot, it might be available to be leased by other private developers if they're unable to provide parking on site.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Commissioner Brenholdt.
Jay, with regards to the $2 million for neighborhood revitalization, spread out $100,000 to $150,000 a year, if there were projects that warranted it, would there be the ability to pull some of those funds forward earlier into the plan?
Yeah, and depending upon the cash flow, for the district, it may be very possible to do that. The other alternative would be to issue debt. If we believe that the cash flow is coming, we could issue debt and use the future tax increments to repay the debt service. So that option would be available.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Thank you. The project plan does not include developer incentives, is that correct?
It does not, that's correct.
Are there any other questions? Commissioner Peterson.
I noticed it goes all the way to Second Avenue along the north side of Water Street. Does it need to go that far and that the development has already taken place?
It does need to go that far in order to capture the increment off that development. The only tax increment that can come into a TIF district is from projects that are actually located within the boundary of that district. So you can spend money out to a half mile beyond the boundaries, but only the increment from properties within the district counts as revenue into that district. And we need the revenue off the project in the 200 block of Water Street in order to fund some of the project expenses.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? I have one for you. The improvements to the bike trail that are going to run along the river, is some of the reason why that trail needs to be rebuilt due to any flood damage that has occurred? Is that causing some of the erosion?
I can't specifically say it's flood related. I mean, it's certainly water related, and just the normal course of the Chippewa River, causes a certain amount of erosion, and certainly in certain times of the year the river is higher than other times of the year. It was built very close to the river. We have limited right of way, so I think it's just natural that some of that's occurred, but by stabilizing that bank through retaining walls and other measures, we can prevent that from occurring in the future.
Are they going to try some different methods than what they did before that obviously didn't have a long shelf life?
Yeah, I think it will be a better engineered solution.
Okay. The area in particular that I'm thinking of is right by the location of the old Kerm's grocery store. There's an area where it's just kind of sliding right in, and I can't say that there's really a lot of high water there, but there's obviously a solution that needs to be found
Right.
so that people can drive and walk on it.
Yep, absolutely.
Any other questions? All right, I think we're set. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that would like to come up and speak?
Good evening.
Feel free to pull the mic down so it's a little closer.
Oh, you noticed I was short. I feel a little bit taller this evening, though. There may be a reason for that. Good evening. My name is Helene Smyer. I live at 320 Broadway Street and in the historic Randall Park neighborhood. And I'm as president of the association, I'm here to speak on their behalf. First, I would like to thank Jay for coming to our meeting last Thursday to give us a brief overview of sections of this proposal. It was very helpful. Questions were asked and clarifications were made. Members had no prior knowledge of this proposal except for the newspaper article that morning, so you could see why this was a very helpful thing for us. So thank you again, Jay. Since that meeting, I have read the proposal, and so I'm able to fit our comments into the table of contents as a reference for you to follow more easily. Jay presented ideas from chapters 2, 3, and a little bit of 4. The main focus was on chapter 9, of course, which was revitalization. However, I would like to briefly comment on chapter 10, which only has 2 sentences, but they're very important, and I know from past meetings that I can speak to them even though we didn't address them at this meeting. It's page 21. It's the little number in the middle, not the, I have big numbers on the right. This is the one in the middle. So it's about zoning, and it states, the improvements proposed in TID number 12 are entirely consistent with the existing zoning ordinance, master plan, building codes, and city ordinances. The next sentence is of the most interest. No changes to any of these are contemplated to allow the implementation of the project plan. We strongly favor this idea of no zoning changes. The end of chapter 8, the plan references the inconsistencies between the Water Street bid plan and our neighborhood plan dealing with zoning changes. They would like to have consideration for R3 and R4, and if you remember correctly, in the 90s, the city downzoned the neighborhood, and the R3 and R4 were taken out, and we strongly still favor that ruling. So just wanted to point that out because that is important to us. So then moving backwards to chapter 9, we spent most of our time on the proposed improvements and land uses. And we went through, I'm just following the bullet points. This is page 20. When he presented information on the Riverfront Trail and Park development, that is exciting news. We're all in favor of that, 100%. It's benefit to the whole city. The off-street parking is consistent with our plan. I think it's been in our plan since the beginning, that 400 block of Chippewa Street. We recognize the necessity of that and the importance. Then we get to the next bullet, which is neighborhood revitalization. The plan, this proposal references that our wants are to encourage the rehabilitation of properties and reduce the number of rental properties. And then it goes on to say this project plan provides funding to establish such a neighborhood revitalization program. And this is where our questions came in. I realize that this is the first residential TIF the city has ever proposed. I believe. We asked that question. I believe that's correct. And it is exciting, and Jay expressed that. It's exciting from a city point of view. And we know that these programs have not been developed. But in the development of them, I would draw attention to that last sentence that follows. The specific design of the program will be determined in consultation with the neighborhood and approved by the city council. Well, we would like to state here that what we would want to see is that language would be a little bit stronger. If you could strengthen that language to include a clearer intent from the city's point of view. Are you intending, we are hoping this would lead into a partnership and not a consultation, but a partnership that has actual agreements. That's our hope. We're not clear if that's the city's intent. We would hope it would be. And I'll tell you why this is important to us. If we have a stronger language, a stronger base for writing for extra grants, this is a very welcome proposal. It's very generous of the city, but we all know that more monies will need to be found. And our hope is to write for foundation grants. So we think that if the language could be stronger, if we had an actual partnership agreement, you know, you speak on page 10 about having, what do we call it, contract agreements with development. We are a development corporation. We call ourselves a revitalization corporation because we're more interested in rehab than we are in taking things down. But it would really be a springboard for us to then make better use of your money by applying for grants with a strong partnership. Foundations will want to know, how is the city invested in this? What is their investment? This is a big investment. And I think to maximize the use of taxpayer funds, we should try to match that. And you have to go to, I know very little about grant writing, but I do know that you should look for foundation grants can be bigger. And so that's kind of what I think we were trying to express to Jay the other night, but we hadn't read the whole proposal, so we didn't really have the framework clear. I think, what else did I want to say? I think that what we're looking for is effective and stronger language that will benefit both of us, because from our point of view, we are all on the same page. The city and our corporation, we're not in it to make a living, we're in it to make living better for those who choose to live there. And so that's a different purpose than a corporation that has to make a living. So we do have some advantages. We're a very young corporation, and of course this is the first money that's ever been directed to our purpose. So we hope to just use it as effectively as possible. And that's kind of what we were kicking around with Jay, and we didn't, his response was, he responded well, and he said at some point there's a certain amount of trust that will go into this, but we honestly think that if corporation grant writing isn't going to work on trust, it needs a stronger language, and that's, I guess, what we would want to see come out of this. Also, we do have a member from our corporate board here who can speak to this a little more and maybe in a different way so that it's a little more clear. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But before I do so, I just want to again thank Jay and thank you, actually, the city. You are the ones that provided all of the information to us that got us to this point of having a revitalization corporation. So I would want you to know that we realize from where this comes, and we want to just make it as effective as possible. So
Are there
thank
any
you.
questions for the speaker? Commissioner Quinn-Kammer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Meyer, when you refer to stronger language, could you be a little more direct in terms of what message that language would communicate?
I think what we're looking for is a language that would communicate a clear partnership. And we have not done this before, so the specific language, I think we should work on it together. I guess the other thought that we have as a neighborhood is we don't want the attitude to be that you are revitalizing the neighborhood for us, but with us. And I think you can utilize our corporation. And so I think it's a partnership agreement, and having never done a contract like that, I'm not exactly sure what the language is, but we would be most happy to work on it with you. We have people in our neighborhood who can work on this. You wouldn't want me. And I should, as just an aside, if you were not at that meeting, we have a new neighbor who happens to be in the business has been in community development. I don't have her exact title. And I don't think Jay had spoken more than 2 minutes when she leaned over to me and she said, "I want to be involved." So I think we would look for our resource people and want to work together on that language. But does that kind of answer your question a little bit?
Are there any other questions? I want to address a couple of things. There's a lot of different pieces of what you're proposing that need a lot of very careful consideration.
Yes.
Because the rules that govern TIDs and TIFs are state law. So we've got to make sure we follow state law, okay? I think that in doing this and doing the revitalization part, there may be a way for the City Housing Authority to also utilize community development block grants, and then you have federal laws that you have to layer with the state laws with it. Add to that, there's possibility of home money and Hickory money, which have different sets of governing bodies and laws. So I don't know that you can put in language that gives you what you want, because we don't know how that fits in with all those different bodies. But that's what different development bodies use to accomplish things like what you're thinking. Okay? So for example, Hickory and Home are often used for down payment assistance programs. And that's one of the things that I think we're thinking may help spur some single families moving back into the neighborhood, is by utilizing things like that. But that's all kind of the future.
Okay, I guess our immediate, maybe a more basic question is, what is the city looking at our neighborhood in terms of revitalization? Are you looking at the same things we are looking at? And I understand it's complex, which is why I say you don't necessarily want me involved, but what vehicle would we use to create a partnership then with the city?
And I think
It wouldn't be this
Jay
document?
is still here, he should probably come up and help address that. Can you give us any clarity? There's so many things to think about.
Oh, you get the tall
No, excellent questions, excellent comments, and yeah, you're absolutely right, Chair Ebert. There are multiple funding sources out there that can be potentially brought to bear. You mentioned several of them. In addition, there are other not-for-profit housing developers in the state that I've worked with in the past that may be entities that we want to work with in partnership. I agree with pretty much everything Ms. Meyer said. That we absolutely intend for this to be a partnership between the neighborhood. I don't have, as I said to you at the meeting, I don't have the answers. I don't know what the right programs are for the neighborhood. I think the Neighborhood Revitalization Task Force did an excellent job of identifying what some of the issues are, but now we need to move from the identification of the issues to what programs will help solve those issues. One of the things that, while Helene was talking, that was running through my mind is whether or not we want to include language in there that talks about entering into an agreement with the Neighborhood Development Corporation. My only concern is it may be premature. I don't know exactly what path this is going to go down, and so it's hard for me to commit at this point to doing that without knowing what these programs are going to look like.
Right.
So that's kind of where I'm at. But as I said to the whole group, and I'm saying to you all here now, our intent is absolutely to work with the neighborhood to help identify programs that will help solve their problems. I don't want to presuppose any solutions at this point.
Yeah, I think this is just kind of a broad overview. The
Yeah.
other thing that occurs to me is that if we actually did go into a partnership agreement with the corporation, that may exclude us from being able to participate in some of those programs, because they are limited to municipalities and units of government. So you have to be very careful how you do it, that you're not cutting off a huge funding source by doing that. So I think that's open for future discussion.
So it could not, it would not be, may I ask a question?
Well, Kathy wanted to. Oh, Jay, you might want to come back up. We're not done with you yet. Let me have Kathy ask a question first.
In thinking of other TIF and TIF projects, it seems to me that the TIF language does not dictate process, that we're way ahead of something like an agreement or a partnership. All this does is identify and commit, if available, $2 million for neighborhood revitalization. And how that's going to be spent and what kind of agreements are going to be established is really not even up to the Plan Commission. It'll be up to the council. So I think that if, with all due respect, and I guess this is sort of a question to Jay, I think Helene is like 3 steps ahead of where we are tonight.
Yeah, and you know,
First time.
you're absolutely right, Commissioner Mitchell, that you know, any appropriations would need to be done by the city council. Those are not being done as part of the project plan. So, and any programs would need to be approved by the city council. So, we're really the project plan provides the funding source, provides the pot of money, but we have to develop the programs, and the council has to appropriate the funds.
Thank you. I think that gives a lot of clarity. Are there any other questions for Jay or Helene?
I have one question. In the distribution of the monies, okay, and I don't think I'm ahead of myself, is this money that's set aside for neighborhood revitalization cannot be used then for other development except that purpose? Is that, like, you can't move money around?
I don't know the answer to that question, but Jay's going to come back up again.
Sorry.
Sorry, Jay, we're giving you your exercise tonight.
I'm going to sit closer next time. This is a plan, okay? It's just like every other plan that the city has, and it is, you know, it needs to be flexible, and it is subject to a certain amount of change, and and there are various assumptions in here concerning development that will occur that will generate additional tax increment. That development doesn't happen. We don't have any money
Sure.
to spend on these programs or plans. Now, ultimately, it's up to the city council to make the appropriations, and we don't do that when we adopt the plan. We do that later, usually through the CIP or Capital Improvement Program, or through
Okay. So
through
this
the
is
budget
the broad
process.
overview.
Right. This is the big picture. This is where we anticipate spending the money. We can't spend money if something isn't in the project plan. We can't spend money on it. So Councilmember Mitchell or Commissioner Mitchell mentioned earlier about developer incentives. There's no money in this plan for developer incentives. If we wanted to spend money on developer incentives, we would have to amend the project plan. So right now, there are really only 3 buckets we can spend money on. That's the bike trail, that's the parking lot, and that's neighborhood revitalization.
Okay, thank you. I think that provides a lot of clarity. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think
Okay.
it does.
Thank you for speaking.
Okay, thank you very much for listening.
Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward? Please state your name and address when you come forward. I forgot to mention that earlier.
My name's Joel Michelson, and I live at 701 Menominee Street. This is exciting. The neighborhood's excited about it. There's a lot of really cool things in this plan. I'm wondering, however, if and I know this is only the beginning, but as Helene said, the language in this plan might be better served if the neighborhood could sit down collaboratively with the developer or developers that initiated it and get our input and get some of our language into it. Because once it's in writing, more times it's cast in stone. And so I don't know if there's a big rush to get this through. I know that the neighborhood's excited about it, but I really think that it wouldn't hurt to get different groups at the table to sit down, whether it's developers, and not just at a listing session, but give us an opportunity to look into those things that are affected by statute, and get our language into it. There's another piece of this, and I don't know, and this is not in one of the buckets that I heard anything about, and I was just going to bring this up, and I don't know if anyone can help, but the main interceptor that runs under the bike trail that they replaced 2 blocks of and abandoned the old pipe along the riverbank, which not only a very high percentage of the sewage runs into in the city of Eau Claire, but all of the new development for that is proposed further down Menominee Street is also going to feed into that main interceptor. It needs upgrading. I mean, the bottom is run out of it. When they replaced the 2 blocks in front of it in my house, well, they replaced it, but they abandoned the old pipe just along the bank, and it's thin and worn out. And it's going to be a substantial expenditure. It needs to be dealt with. And I don't know if there's any way to add a bucket for that, but it needs to be replaced. It was put in 1948. It's a 48-inch pipe, and it's at the end of its life. And it should be addressed at the same time we're doing the bike trail, because it runs right underneath it in a lot of the places. And there's not much left of it. So I don't know if there were dollars in there to replace that main interceptor, but it's failing, and that I don't know if anyone can answer a question about monies put in it for that.
Jay can come forward.
Yep, excellent, excellent point as well. The replacement of that interceptor is not included as a project expense within this, but we are planning on replacing it. It would be a cost to the wastewater utility to replace that. That's why it doesn't show up in here, because there wouldn't be any TIF dollars used to replace it. And just to address one other comment, this was not a developer-driven TID. This was a city staff-driven TID, and it's really being done in large part for the benefit of the neighborhood, to implement the neighborhood revitalization, the recommendations of the neighborhood revitalization task force, because we really don't have any other sources of funds to direct to that purpose. So really, this is a staff-driven tax incremental district.
Are there any questions for the speaker?
I just had one other comment. I recall at the Water Street bid, I'm on the Water Street bid as well, and I remember when we were going to propose this to them, so it maybe came from staff, but there was developer involvement in this, because I was on the bid board when I don't know when it got to staff, but we brought it up at the bid board a couple years ago, so there was developer involvement in it, but anyway.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? I don't see any. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to come up and speak? Please, you need to give a yellow piece of paper to Ryan, but you can do that after you speak. Please introduce yourself with your name and address.
Thanks. I'm Mark Gideonson, 520 2nd Avenue, and I'm on the board of the Historic Randall Park Revitalization Corporation, so I thought I'd say a few words as well. Nothing really new here. We're very excited about the city's initiative and vision in doing this kind of revitalization, which is great. We really appreciate Jay coming out, even though we gave him a really hard time. I think felt maybe, I don't know, justifiably a little bit surprised to be have a bunch of vultures like gouge at him, and he was coming with gifts, which was nice. And I think that just kind of reflects a little bit of disquietude among the neighbors and the Revitalization Corporation. We had incorporated, we had the vision to do this, we incorporated long before we had any idea that there was any money coming potentially from the city. We're looking at all kinds of different funding resources and other ways of going forward with what we think is in the neighborhood's best interests. So poor Jay shows up and we're like, well, you're not going to let the developers have the say over all this, are you? The kind of thing. And I think it's just that sense that we're moving forward and we see the city here with resources and we're so thrilled with that. And we are out ahead, I think, on this in our thinking and our goals for where and when and how and what we want to do. And we just are very anxious to make that progress in partnership with the city. And there was just a little bit of suspicion maybe that, different groups, different interested parties are going to have different ideas of what revitalization might look like, and we're just a little bit paranoid about that ended up serving more commercial interests. So hope that's helpful, but we're very excited about it and look forward to moving forward.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? I don't see any. Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this issue? Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this issue? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and I'd be looking for a motion.
I'll move approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Mitchell.
Well, I just want to say that I will vote in favor of this. I certainly approve of the TID 12 project plan. And I think that the putting money aside for neighborhood revitalization is a really big deal. And I'm glad to see that we're following our own plans and that we're doing it. And I really appreciate the staff doing the work on this.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Peterson.
When I first read this weekend, and again today, I was a little leery, but with the comments by Helene, the answers by Jay, that this was staff-driven as opposed to developer-driven, although developers could have an interest in this too. I've totally changed my mind. I came in here fairly negative against this, and now I'm quite positive.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Larson.
Thank you. I just want to say I'm going to support it as well, and support Commissioner Mitchell's comments about the neighborhood revitalization. I think that's a central part of this plan that compels me to support it. We've been working for a number of years on that particular issue, and for this to come along now is just perfect. So I'm very happy about it.
Any further commentary? Then Commissioner Klinkhammer.
Thank you. I have to, thank you. Neighborhood revitalization was one of the primary drivers of the revision of the comprehensive plan. And to have this brought forward is exciting. And I appreciated Ms. Smeyer's remarks. And the concern that I would have with having more stronger language in there would be if we tried to change that language, we could inadvertently limit our options and how we could move money into neighborhood revitalization, et cetera. So I think it's fine just the way it is, and I think we should support it.
Any final comments? Then I call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item on our agenda is public hearing for recommendation to rezone property from TR1A to R2, the west side of Mary Place, south of Renee Drive, north of Christopher Drive.
This is the property on the west side of Mary Place. The surrounding zoning of the site is mostly R2 zoning. And that is an aerial photo then of the 6 duplexes. that are part of this rezoning. And again, you'll notice the surrounding development is mostly duplexes. The applicant owns the existing duplex at 4126 Mary Place. It was recently destroyed in a fire, and this proposed zoning of the property would allow applicant to obtain building permits for a new duplex. The comprehensive plan identifies areas being appropriate for low-density residential development, which does include duplexes and R2 zoning by definition in the plan text. And again, the surrounding area is duplex development. We've recommended approval.
Are there any questions for Commissioner Tufte? Commissioner Mitchell?
I just have a general zoning question. Were these houses there when the land was annexed?
Yes, this was a large development that was completed in the town of Union. It was annexed quite a few years ago.
Okay.
Quite a bit of it has been zoned R2. Some has not, simply because the property owners have not petitioned for that rezoning.
So if a property is annexed, a vacant property, and when someone goes to build, they don't have to rezone it?
No, if you have property that's annexed and you want a building permit for it, you have to get a zoning first, so they come to public hearings once they want a building permit. These properties have been there for many years, have never needed a building permit. The fire caused the need for a building permit, and that's why they're here. This property owner then contacted these others and said, you want to get in on this and save yourself that time and effort at a later date, and they all said, sure, we'll get in on this, get it done with. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Commissioner Peterson?
When the properties were annexed into the city, you said the buildings were already on there.
Mm-hmm.
Why, at that time, weren't they zoned as TR2A?
Under state law, when we annex property, we give it a temporary zoning classification, which normally is TR1A is what we've used. And until it's rezoned, it doesn't have the ability to get a building permit. It's basically the way state law is set up.
Since they were already duplexes on the properties, could they have been TR2?
We could have, but we've been
And that
using the TR. We should just use T is what we should do, but temporary. But we've used TR1A for decades. So
Okay, maybe just in the future you can look at what development is there and maybe try and...
you could. Although in this case, this was a very large annexation, although most of the areas duplexes, there were some single-family homes and there were some vacant lots, so it would have been difficult to determine what temporary to give each lot, so.
Okay. So you're looking more generally at
Yep.
the whole area?
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Are there any other questions for Daryl? I don't see any. Do we have an applicant? Yes. Do we have would the applicant like to come forward? Where's your yellow piece of paper?
We ran out back there, but I'll do one.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm not the applicant. I'm Paul Holsinger with Bungalow Point Homes. I've been contacted by the property owner to rebuild this duplex. And so it looks like we're just trying to obtain what probably should be the correct zoning for that parcel. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have for me.
Are there any questions for the speaker? I don't see any. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Anyone else who'd like to speak? If not, we'll close the public hearing, and I'd be looking for a motion.
I move approval.
Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, third item on the agenda, public hearing, final action for a conditional use permit for a bed and breakfast at 107 Elizabeth Street.
This is the property at the corner of Elizabeth Street and First Avenue. There's primarily RM zoning to the north and west, and commercial zoning to the south. And that's an aerial photo of the property. Note the parking lot that does exist to the back of the property, and then the homes to the north and west, and the commercial uses to the south. We did attach the application, which was completed by applicant and explains this request. The applicant states they will live in the home and open up 3 bedrooms for guests for overnight stay during the weekends, holidays, and other special occasions. We placed in your report the standards for review of bed and breakfasts. We would note this property is a large landmarked home. They plan no additions. The appearance of the dwelling will be maintained. They have at least 3 parking stalls to the back of that building for guest parking, plus they have parking for themselves. That looks like 6 or 7 stalls is what they actually have on site. We did contact the neighborhood association, and I see they are here this evening. And we note in the report the provisions which the Plan Commission should consider in reviewing these types of requests. And if you find compliance with those conditions, you should approve this application. Are there any questions?
Commissioner Seymour.
Thank you. Daryl, in the provisions, is it required that they actually occupy the home?
A home occupation is defined as a dwelling, which in our opinion means you're living in the home, or at least you're in the home when the folks that are staying there are present. If you're not in the home when the folks come and rent the place, then you're essentially not a dwelling, you're a hotel and need commercial zoning. So based on our definition of a bed and breakfast, it is a dwelling. Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions? Whoops. Are there any other questions for Daryl? I have one. I was looking at the assessor's records today on this, and are there currently apartments in the building right now, or is it currently a single-family house?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Should ask the applicant.
Okay.
Its current use.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Daryl. Is the applicant here? Please state your name and address, and you should fill out one of the yellow slips of paper later.
Okay.
Okay?
We're John and Sharon Moss, 107 Elizabeth Street.
Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Yes.
And what would you like to tell us about the project?
Well, I don't know. It's kind of it's an interesting project or proposal. We moved to the house in 2009, and I think I've explained to a few people because we've had some questions. Unless you live on the bike trail, I guess it's a great place to live, but also has kind of a flip side to it. A few years ago, we ran into some issues with noise complaints, and just overall kind of wanting to take a step back from the house for our kids. We have a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old. We kind of went back and forth, and as much as we love the house, we're not ready to sell it, we're not ready to move, but we did kind of want to take a step away from it for temporary. And the best, I guess, use of the house we thought would be to, I don't know, rent it out part of the time, see if it's something we want to leave or if we want to stay. It's a very public house. We've learned that you can't be out in the front yard for more than an hour or you're going to get a lot of people asking questions. And it's tough because when we moved there, I was a pretty social person. I love talking to people. I would open that door up to anybody who wanted to see. And we are avid bikers. We would bike past that house when it was dilapidated and the windows were covered, and I'd always say, oh, I can't wait to see what it looks like inside. When we moved there and my husband would be gone for the weekend, I would turn every light on. And I would just sit and watch people stare at the house. I saw, joy that it brought them, and I mean, that's exciting. But over years, it kind of gets old after a while. But I still love the house, and I think I want to share the house with people. I think it's an asset to the downtown, and I think it would bring great, tourism dollars, people using it.
Definitely. Yeah, we were asked to share the house, open up to people. We were asked to share it. It's kind of sharing. The bike trail is, there's 2 sides to it. If you're living on it, it's great, but sometimes like at bar time, it's not so great too, because there's a lot of traffic.
Are there any questions for the applicant? I have one if no one else does.
Sure.
So I see you already have a parking pad at the back. Do
Yes.
you rent out part of the house now? Or are
Right.
there apartments or?
Yeah,
Okay.
there are the house, if you were to look at it from the street, there's like two wings in the back.
Okay.
And those apartments have been there since, I think, the 30s.
Okay.
So it is currently rented out to.
Okay.
Yeah.
And would you continue renting those out separately, or would they become part of the bed and breakfast?
No, they would not be.
Okay.
The house
Currently
itself,
leased.
the front side is, everybody asks us why we never got rid of the apartments. The house itself, the front side is I think, like 5,000 square feet.
Okay.
It's enormous from
So
basement.
it's self-contained?
It is. It's self-contained. It's enormous from basement to the attic. And, you know, we have, I think there's 5 living rooms. It's kind of like, what would we really need with that space? And I don't know, we've never had tenant problems. We've never had any issues with them. So
Yeah,
it wasn't
there's-
something we would look at getting rid of.
They're one person per apartment, and they're actually students, and they're great people. They're, you know, it's not your typical college student. It's someone who actually wants to study and go to school, and it's one person, so they're not going to, you know, have house parties. So they've been really good. Actually, you hardly know they're there. In fact, this summer, I think they're all home for the summer. So really, we're renting it for 12 months, but they're only there 9 months.
Okay. Are there any questions for the applicant? I don't see any. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this issue?
I just want to say that John and Sharon came to our meeting on Thursday and presented this, and unanimously, the neighborhood was in favor of it. And several specific examples of people who would rent it for their visiting relatives who can't stay in the house because they have cats. I mean, all kinds of
Sure.
stories. Was very welcome. One neighbor who came simply to support this. So from the neighborhood's point of view, we see no problem.
Thank you.
And if you've ever been in that house, rent it. Oh, it's gorgeous. I've been in there.
Very good. Are there any questions for the speaker? I don't see any. Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this issue? Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this issue? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, and I'd be looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I don't see any lights. We'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. So the next item on our agenda for recommendation is a final plat for the Jeffers Road Townhomes Phase 3.
This property is located on the east side of Jeffers Road, south of Shorewood Drive. And these are the first phases of the project. The greenhouse facilities to the east, there's existing duplexes to the north, and these duplexes are now under construction. This is the preliminary plat for the project that was approved by Plan Commission. And about half the project now has final plat and is under construction. The final plat you'll see tonight is for the second half of the project down here. And there is the final plat. Whoa. For the third phase. And this will actually complete the project, this final plat. The final plat is consistent with the approved preliminary plat. It creates 28 lots for 14 twin homes. It does provide the shared access easement for the 4 units along that private drive. It also has an easement for city utilities within that private drive. It provides the utility easements for XL, AT&T, and Spectrum Cable. We are recommending approval. Applicant contacted our office this afternoon and was not able to make the meeting, just so you're aware of that.
Are there any questions for Mr. Tufti? I have one.
Yes.
If the little short street is a private drive, does it still get plowed by the city?
In this case, it's set up where they'll take care of the private drive, the owners of those units.
Okay.
It's set up that way.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. there any other questions for Daryl? I don't see any. Thank you. The applicant is not here this evening. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on their behalf? Seeing no one, this is a public hearing. I'd open it up for public comment if anyone would like to say anything. Is there any commentary that anyone would like to make? I don't see anything. So we'll close the public hearing, and I'd be looking for a motion.
I move approval.
We have a motion.
I'll second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda for approval, a site plan for a warehouse and storage facility at 2920 Mondovi Road.
They work. This is the property. It has access to Mondovi Road. It backs onto Highway 37. There's mini warehouse complex to the north and other industrial type uses within the area. This is the site plan for the project. It has access to Mondovi Road. It has 1, 2, 3, 4 mini warehouse type facilities, and then a 5th building, which is a general warehouse building shown on the site plan. And within your packet are various depictions of the mini warehouses and the general warehouse with overhead door and loading dock facility. This building's a 10,000 square foot warehouse building. These 3 buildings here are 12,000 square foot storage buildings, and the smaller one here is 7,200 square foot storage building. Again, the warehouse building appears to have loading dock with a vehicle parking area for 5 stalls. They do show street trees along Mondovi Road, front foundation plantings. They also need to provide street trees along Highway 37, which should be a mixture of trees and pine trees as normal plantings as per landscape manual standards when you're along a state highway. There are 2 non-conforming billboards on the property. Staff has requested lease agreements for those property or for those billboards. We did place in the report the provisions of city code pertaining to legal non-conforming billboards. Applicant will either need to remove those non-conforming billboards with this site plan submittal or provide us a copy of the lease or agreement which may prohibit them from occurring at this time. That's essentially what city code says. If that agreement says it's in place for the next 2 years, then we'll place a condition on this site plan that says in 2 years, then that's when those billboards have to come down. Their site access is a 33 and 35 foot wide curb cut to Mondovi Road, which needs plan commission approval, and we're okay with that because we do anticipate truck traffic going in and out of this site. They do need to provide a pedestrian link to the building. They do need to provide a 4-stall bike rack with this building, and their light fixtures must meet city code standard. We did receive an email from applicant this afternoon. They did note that this building would be have such items as well pumps or auto towing items within it, and that's fine as long as they're indoors, but applicant needs to understand they cannot have outdoor storage with this facility. They did note that this is an unmanned location. If this is truly an unmanned location, there's no employees here, Plan Commission can actually waive that pedestrian link requirement and the bike rack requirements because there's no one at this facility. And they said they are still waiting on the lease agreements for the 2 non-conforming billboards, just so the Plan Commission is aware of that. We did review site grading, drainage, and other city services in our report. We provided a draft letter with conditions of approval. They state provide 2 copies of revised site plans noting street trees and buffering along Highway 37, either showing the removal of those non-conforming billboards on the property or a lease agreement that says they will be removed at such time that lease expires. Providing that pedestrian link, providing the bike rack, and with your approval, again, you are allowing that 35 and 33-foot wide curb cuts. We need city engineer approval of drainage, and the exterior lighting needs to meet city standards. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for Mr. Tufti?
Mr. Tufti, are you saying that if there is a lease that allows for those non-conforming billboards, that lease cannot be extended when it comes?
Correct.
They have to go?
Yeah, that's the way the code's written. There are some that are written into perpetuation, whatever the term is.
Perpetuity?
Perpetuity, thank you. CVS Pharmacies, big billboard, that's one written into perpetuity.
Oh.
So it's a great example of one that will not come down. Others, they're not, and that's when they we'll get them down, is when the leases expire.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Tufti? Commissioner Seymour.
Thank you. And the paved areas will be of what material?
They show them as pavement.
Okay, I couldn't find that detail.
It's written on the plans, future paving.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Tufti? I don't see any. Oh, Commissioner Peterson.
Did they give a reason why the north driveway had to be 33 feet instead of 30? In that isn't in front of the loading docks?
No. All I can say is engineering indicated to us they're okay with it. We're okay with it because we do anticipate boats, trailers, trucks going in and out of these types of mini storage facilities. But it does require your approval.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? I don't see any. Is the applicant here?
Good evening. My name is Sean Bohan, 1360 International Drive. I'm here on behalf of the client. I'm with Advanced Engineering Concepts. I talked with the client today. We don't really have anything to object to. I know that he had sent an email that talked about it being an unmanned warehouse, and therefore had questions on the bike rack and the pedestrian link to Mondovi Road, but it sounds like Darrell took care of that as far as what he talked about. But I'm just here to answer any questions, if you have them.
Are there any questions for the applicant? I don't see any. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this issue? Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this issue? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and I'd be looking for a motion. Commissioner Mitchell.
I'll move approval with staff recommendations minus the pedestrian link and the 4-stall bike rack.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, for approval, site plan, 60-unit CBRF Assisted Living and Memory Care at 5110 Stonewood Drive.
This is the property located on the north side of Stonewood Drive, south of US Highway 12 or 312. And this is the site plan for the property with Stonewood Drive, access into the site at 3 driveway locations, front parking and side parking to the building on the site. Building elevations, you got to actually piece those together. It's a long building, residential in appearance. and the floor plans are also in there. That's a 60-unit facility, and it is consistent with the general development plan approved by City Council with the zoning of this property. That's a 20-stall parking lot in front of the building, 8-stall parking lot to the side. The residents of this facility do not drive. Parking is based on number of employees and visitor parking needs. Applicant states they have 12 employees at the site, which does leave 16 stalls available for visitors. Bike parking for 4 stalls designed as per the attached standards of city are actually shown on the site plan. I think my glasses I need to wear more often. I can't read anymore. The sidewalk they have in front of the building and to the side of the building needs to be linked to the city sidewalk, which will be along the north side of the road, and they can do that relatively easy in at least 4 locations. Probably 2 of them would be ample. That city sidewalk is mostly on private property because of the width of the street here, and we do need a easement to address that situation. The landscape plan shows front foundation plantings. They got the street trees in along Stonewood Drive. And they got some parking lot shade trees. We are recommending street trees also along Mill Run, and then a combination of street trees and pine tree plantings along the state right-of-way. Exterior lighting is actually noted, if one reads, so I can't read either, to meet city standards. They do have a monument sign, they're noted on the site plan, which is too large for us to administratively approve and would actually need a conditional use permit by Plan Commission. Site grading and drainage and other city services are reviewed in the report, including the provision of paratransit agreement for this facility. We provided a draft letter with conditions that recommend approval with providing 4 copies of revised site plan. A, the 4-stall bike rack, they actually indicate on the site plan, so that's satisfied. Providing that link of the sidewalk out to the city sidewalk. Revising the landscape plans, as we note in the report. D, they actually indicate that they will meet city standards on a note on the site plan. They do need to provide an easement for that city sidewalk. We do need engineering approval of drainage. They do need to enter into an agreement to provide paratransit service to the site. Their signs will need to meet R3 district standards and reviewed by permit, or they'll have to go to the Plan Commission with a conditional use permit for the sign they're showing on the site plan. Any questions?
Are there any questions for Daryl? Commissioner Mitchell.
Daryl, is there any way to imagine or calculate how much parking is needed for visitors? 16 spaces doesn't seem like very much to me. If a quarter of the people have visitors on a Sunday afternoon, that's not very many. Is there parking on Stonewood Drive? Or?
There is. That's the one advantage of this street is designed as a commercial street because remember this property had commercial zoning, so it's a substantially wide street that allowed parking on both sides of it. So there is available parking on street in those situations. And there are likely to be situations on holidays or weekends where there may be a need for more parking, but most of the time we expect that the visitor parking is addressed with this parking on site. In terms of a standard and code, no, there's no standard code. It's just going to be the judgment of a plan commission that makes that determination.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Tufte? I don't see any right now. Is the applicant here?
Good evening, Planning Commission. Mark Erickson with Kramer Land Design Studio, representing Consolidated Corporation and Care Partners on this. Essentially, we have no objections to any of the recommendations. I just want to clarify a few things. There is an existing sidewalk easement along Stonewood. Right in here, there's a 10-foot corridor, and piggyback on top of that is a 10-foot utility easement right along that edge. We are working on processing a CSM up here. There was not the I'll allude to what's true, as you saw before on Daryl's map here. This was broken into two parcels like this. We are going to realign those two parcels to be one big parcel here and then one over to the easterly edge. Not create any more, just moving some lot lines. And in that process, we are going to, through the CSM, create a 10-foot sidewalk easement and a 10-foot utility easement, so we'll be married up with that pretty darn good. Sign, we understand a conditional use permit would have to be obtained. Being the zoning, it really limits us to a square footage. It's just not that big, as you know. Street trees, everything else is, we're apropos with that.
Very good. Are there any questions for the applicant? I don't see any. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Would anyone else like to speak to this issue? Would anyone else like to speak to this issue? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and I'd be looking for a motion.
I move for approval with staff recommendations.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Peterson.
We are not at this time granting a conditional use permit for the sign, though. That would come at a later date. Correct, okay.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Thank you. I'm going to make the most unhelpful comment of the evening, and that is that I don't think there's enough parking here, but I don't know what to do about it. I just want to say that.
Is there any other discussion? Commissioner Radabaugh.
On the parking issue, it looks like there's a lot of green space there, and if the clients and the people that are visiting are having problems parking, I would suspect it could add on. Unless I'm wrong, Daryl, the green space can be used?
That's true. There is available room on the site if they needed to expand their parking lot, yes.
Is there any other discussion? I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Then, for discussion and direction, Hope Gospel Mission Comprehensive Plan Amendment Letter.
I wanted to start by apologizing. It appears we did not include the attachment of Hope Gospel's material in your packet. We did hand that out prior to the meeting. This is a picture of a portion of the city's comprehensive plan land use map, and it is within Hope Gospel's attachment, and they're indicating on this map the area that they are requesting the amendment. The amendment basically is to change what is presently designated residential to a red or commercial designation. That's essentially all that they're asking in terms of this amendment request. To blow that up, this is a vicinity map then showing its location. It's actually fronting on Frank Street on the east side of North Claremont Avenue at Moholt. And this is an aerial photo then showing the two existing assisted living facilities on the property. This is a quick trip. It's an apartment, and these are duplexes surrounding the site. And this is a picture of then the existing facilities on the property that presently are assisted living facilities for the elderly. Again, we did hand out the material we received from Hope Gospel Mission requesting Plan Commission initiate a comprehensive plan amendment for properties on Frank Street. The comprehensive plan currently designates these properties for residential use. The plan amendment, which applicant is requesting the Plan Commission to initiate, is to designate the properties as being appropriate for commercial use. The current use of the properties are assisted living facilities for elderly. An applicant would like to use the property for their women and children facility, which do require commercial zoning. In other words, they're going to petition to rezone this property to commercial. Zoning has to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Therefore, they're saying we'd like the plan to be amended so that that could occur. The request by applicant is to initiate the public hearing. You're not being asked to decide it. You're only being asked to initiate. Under state law, only a plan commission can initiate a change to a comprehensive plan. If the plan commission decides to initiate these hearings, we will have applicant submit the rezoning and other applications for the project at this time. This will then allow the city to process and consider the comprehensive plan amendment, the rezoning, and all other applications concurrently. And the reason we want to do that is it then allows us to provide public hearing notice to all property owners within 300 feet of the site as required by law. And we are recommending the Plan Commission initiate this comprehensive plan amendment at this time. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for Daryl? Commissioner Peterson.
On the reverse side of that, the criteria to consider when reviewing plan changes,
Yes.
do you just need to meet 1, 2, 3, or all 10?
It says what should be considered, which in my mind, it does not have to meet all of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Commissioner Carr. Thank you.
Essentially, the CBRF is allowed within the residential, but this use qualifies as multifamily residence? once you
This
have
is actually a treatment facility
Becomes
under
a
the
treatment
terms of
facility.
our zoning code and therefore needs commercial zoning. Had they licensed it as a CBRF, they would not need commercial zoning. However, Hope Gospel does not license their facilities under CBRF licensing with state law. Therefore, the facilities they have within our community have commercial zoning.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Tufti? I don't see any right now. So do I treat this like a regular item and have the applicant come forward?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good. Is the applicant here?
Good evening. Craig Peterson, Operations Director with Hope Gospel Mission. We have been searching for a site for several years, and we feel that this is the best site to come forward in our search. We've had a very warm reception from the neighborhood. We've tried to meet as many of the neighbors as possible. I believe several of them will be joining us at the meetings in the future in front of this committee and the City Council. Basically, just here to answer any questions tonight.
Are there any questions for the applicant? I have one if no one else does. The facility that works with women and children now, is it across the street where the bargain center is, or?
Currently only able to serve men and women without children.
Okay, so
And
you
so
don't have
the
anything.
Ruth House, which is in the same building as our bargain center, is
Okay.
for women that do not currently have custody of their children or don't have children.
Okay, so right now you don't have a facility that takes
Correct.
a more family unit?
This group, the council, state rules, insurance, did not make it feasible to utilize that facility for women with children. And it really is two separate groups to serve separately, not under the same roof, so.
Sure, very good. Are there any questions for the applicant? I don't
All
see
right,
any.
thank you.
Oh, Commissioner Mitchell.
I just have a statement that for both you and Daryl, I think it's a good idea all around that you're going to bring all of it at once, not just the comp plan revision and then the site plan and everything else. I think having it all at one time is not only convenient, but I think it's a good thing for the community to see it all at one time.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't
All
see
right,
any other
thank you.
questions. This is a public hearing. If there's anyone else who'd like to speak to this issue. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this issue? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. So do we treat this and put it forth a motion?
I think you should actually have a motion for this situation, yes.
Okay. So specifically, you want a motion for us to bring this forward to public hearing? Okay. So moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion? Let's call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. So, step 2. All right. Code compliance items. Nobody's got anything. Commissioner Larson?
Did John Gettinger happen to talk to you about 209 East Grand? He's helping me out here. Ryan's getting up.
Yes, he has. Daryl was out on vacation. Yes, we are under the understanding that they have, they got red tagged. They do not have any building permits at this time, and I believe they're trying to create it into a college rental property. And they were trying to create like 3 more bedrooms in a house that already had 3 bedrooms, so they got red tagged. I'm not sure from there on, but we'll follow up with John tomorrow.
What does that mean?
Red tag means you got to stop working immediately and get permits, because they don't have any building permits at this time either.
Yeah, they told some neighbors there that they planned on having 6 tenants.
Yeah, which wouldn't be allowed, obviously.
Very good. Any future agenda items? Any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, we are adjourned.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689 or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.